Hello and welcome back to the Pastor's Q&A. I'm Pastor Ryan, excited to bring to you an answer from another question. And this one is about what happens to the soul after we die. It goes like this. Could you please share what you believe happens when a person dies and the reason for your belief? Does the person's soul go directly to be with Jesus, or does the soul rest until Jesus comes back for his saints? And so, one phrase that we can use when talking about the idea of the soul resting is the phrase soul sleep. And this is actually closely related to another question about purgatory. And so, the question is, does the soul go immediately into the presence of Jesus, or is there some sort of intermediate state before the final judgment and the last day? And this is a lot more than just a theological pondering. This affects how we should think about those in Christ who have died. My wife Savannah and I, we've had two friends just over the past week that have lost their babies. And so, as we are dealing with the loss of loved ones, as we are dealing with the loss of dear believers, how should we think about their present existence? When we think about the afterlife, we often think that there is sort of this category of earth, and then there's this category of heaven or hell, and that's the perpetual existence forever. But in the Bible, it's actually the phrase heaven and earth that is paired together over and over and over again. God's intention is for heaven and earth to be one. And so as we are praying for God's kingdom to come, we are praying for the integration of heaven and earth. And so as we are thinking about this, the final existence of the believer is not to be floating around on clouds as some sort of angel wearing or playing a harp, or a baby wearing a diaper and just kind of floating around in ethereal nothingness. No, no, no. The biblical idea is that at the last day, the body that you are in right now will be resurrected. That resurrection body will be reunited with your soul, and you will live on a very physical new earth and new heaven in the presence of Jesus. And so the question for us is, what happens in between? What happens in between the death of the believer and that final resurrection? I believe that the Bible consistently teaches that when you die, your soul goes into the immediate presence of Jesus, awaiting the final resurrection and the reunification of your soul and your body. And so we're going to look at four different passages that support this. We're going to look at two from Paul, and then we're going to look at two from Jesus. And so first passage is in the book of Philippians. This is Philippians Chapter 1, and we are looking at verses 21 through 23. And Paul says this. He says, "If I am to live in the flesh, that means..." Oh, wait, let me back up. One more verse here. He says, "For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. Yet, which I shall choose, I cannot tell. I am hard-pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better." And so Paul, as he's talking to the Philippians, he says that for him to die is gain. It is better for him to die, not because he's going to go into a state of unconsciousness for the next few thousand years, but the way he says it is, my desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. The second passage that we turn to is in the book of 2 Corinthians. And so Paul, he is encouraging the Corinthians about their heavenly dwelling, and he says this, starting in chapter 5, verse 6. He says, "We are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord, for we walk by faith and not by sight. Yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please Him." And so once again, Paul, he gives no hint of any intermediate state, neither in purgatory nor in unconsciousness. He says, in a parallel passage to Philippians, he says to be away from the body is to be at home. at home in the presence of Jesus, in the presence of the Lord, with nothing in between. So for Paul, it can truly be said that neither life nor death, nothing can separate him and nothing can separate the believer from the love of Christ and also the presence of Christ. Now let's turn to the words of Jesus himself. A couple different passages from the book of Luke. So the first one is in Luke 23, and at this point in the narrative, Jesus is hanging on the cross and he's being crucified between two criminals. One criminal criticizes him. The other criminal actually rebukes that criminal and then speaks to Jesus, and he says this, starting in verse 42. He says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus says to him, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Now, those who advocate for a soul sleep position, what they do is they say that this word today actually connects back to the first phrase, as I say to you today, comma, you will be with me in paradise. But when you look at the construction of the grammar, both in the English and especially in the Greek, almost all scholars agree that the word today is a qualifier for the word paradise, not for the first phrase. And you see it because it's actually two parallel phrases. The first qualifier is truly. Truly, I say to you. And then the next one, today you will be with me in paradise. So the truly connects to I say to you, and today connects to you will be with me in paradise. Jesus says that this thief will immediately be with him upon his death. Today they will be together in paradise. And then the second passage is a little bit earlier in the book of Luke. This one is the famous account of the rich man and Lazarus. This is from Luke chapter 16. And I want to read this here, a section from this, starting at verse 19. It says, "There was a rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed with what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came to lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried, and in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side." Now, Jesus does not say that this is a parable. This could be a parable, it's very possible, but Jesus doesn't say that it is. It could also be an account of something that actually happened. And so what you see from this is either way, whether it's a parable or whether it's an account of something that actually happened, Jesus is making the point that the life after death, the life before the resurrection, is one of consciousness. It is either, in the case of the rich man, an existence of conscious torment, or, in the case of Lazarus, an existence of constant happiness and joy in the presence of God. And that's what Jesus tells us. And so for the Christian, we get a double encouragement. If you are in Christ, you can be encouraged by the fact that on the last day, your body, no matter how broken it is, no matter how sick it is, will be resurrected and made new, just like the body of Jesus after the resurrection. And your soul will be reunited. It will no longer be dislocated from your body like it was at death, but will be reunited as you live on a new heaven and in the new earth in the presence of Jesus. That's encouragement number one. And encouragement number two is that for the believer who dies, there is for the soul a sweet and intimate experience in the presence of Jesus as we await that final resurrection. So if you are watching this, if you are listening to this, as soon as this stops, if you were to die, if you are in Christ, it would be gain for you, for it is better to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Pastor's Q&A. You can submit a question online. You can go to radiantofcamus.org, see past questions. You can also email us at pastorsqa untitled.chapter@gmail.com. Catch us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Follow us, like us, leave us a review. We'll see you next time.